Hi guys, this is Shivarati. Welcome to the session on JDBC Interview Question and Answers. In this session, I am going to explain most frequently asked interview questions related to JDBC. Let's go ahead and start. The first question is, what is JDBC API? Java provides JDBC API to interact with the database. By using this JDBC API, you can accessing and processing the data stored in the database. In order to work with the JDBC, you must have a relational database in the backend. Either it may be Oracle, DB2, MySQL, any relationship database is mandatory. So by using the JDBC, you can access the database such as all the CRUD operations like you can insert data, update data, delete, and also DDL operations and grant, revoke, all this whatever the operation you can perform on the relationship database using the JDBC API. Through Java application, you can invoke all these commands in on the database using the JDBC API. So Java will come with an API or the package called as in java.sql. This package contains all the interfaces and classes which are used to interact with the database and interact with the database is nothing but all the operations whatever you can perform on the database by using this Java SQL APIs you can perform. So next one is what are the different types of drivers available to connect to the database. So there are four types of the drivers available in order to connect it and interact with the database. The first one is the type 1 driver where this is in JDBC ODBC bridge driver where it requires the connection on the each client. Whenever a client want to talk to the database, each client has to configure this JDBC ODBC bridge driver, but currently it is not used for production purpose, only for testing purpose or the development environment you can use this type 1 driver. And in the case of type 2 driver, so JDBC calls are converted into a native API or C++ APIs calls and which eventually talk to the database. So this is also developed in the C++ language, hence it is not the so type 2 driver is not portable. That means the commands whatever we are giving it is depending on the native API class. So there is it does not have the portability that we call as a platform independent feature is not here. And the third is the type 3 driver where the JDBC client uses standard network sockets to communicate with the middleware application server. That middleware application server internally convert the SQL statement which are compatible with the database related calls and execute the queries against the database. And whereas in the case of type 4 driver, these are purely developed in the Java based driver communicates directly with the vendor database through the socket connection. So using the type 4, there is no middleware. Directly our Java application can directly talk to the relational database and execute all the queries or commands with respect to the database. So these are the four types of the driver in order to interact with the database. Based on your requirement, you can select any one of the driver to interact your Java application with the database. Now, the third question is on what are the steps involved in working with the JDBC. So, in order to work with the JDBC, there are basically few steps we need to follow. The first one is you have to load the driver class. That means each based on the relational database what you have in the backend like Oracle, DB2, MySQL, Postgres, any language, any database. Based on the language specific, you have to load the driver. The first step is loading the driver, and second one is establishing a connection. So this establishing a connection is requires the URL for the database URL, and then user a schema name and password for the database. Once you provide those details, then the Java JDBC will provide an API to get the connection. And once you get the connection, by using the connection, you can create a statement. So creating a statement is nothing but which is going to help you to execute the SQL statements. And then finally, you are going to execute the query against the database using the statement. Once you execute the database query against the database, it will going to return you the result set, and Using that result set, you have to process the result set and get the data. Finally, you need to close the connection. So these are the 6 steps it is going to involve while you are retrieving the data from the database. So if you are using like a update statement against the database, then processing the results may not be, this step is not going to, it is not required. But if you are using like a fetch operations or select queries, then you have to follow the steps in order to work with the JDBC. Then the next question is on what is statement and the different type of statements available in the JDBC. There are 3 statements available in JDBC. First of all, let us see what is meant by statement. So statement is an interface which is going to help you to execute the SQL statements uh, uh, SQL statements against the database. Basically, using the statement, you are going to whenever you create a statement, using that statement, you can execute the queries against the database. And there are 3 types of the statements. One is statement, prepared statement, and callable statement. Statement, generally, if you want to use non-parameterized queries, if you have anything, then you will prefer to use the statement. And if you have any parameterized queries like where condition you want to pass some parameters, then prepared statement is the suitable one. But the basic difference between statement and prepared statement is whenever you execute any query using the statement object, then what happens is it will first compile and then execute against the database. There are 2 steps always is going to follow. The first one is that means statement using the connection dot create statement. Then first it will going to compile and against the database. But in the case of prepared statement, if you are creating a prepared statement object, then first time only it is going to compile and then next time onwards only execute the query. Hence there is a lot of significant improvement in the performance you can see by using the prepared statement. And third one is the callable statements. Callable statements are used when you are working with the when you want to execute procedure or the functions from the Java application, then you have to use the callable statement. So at a high level, statement using connection dot create statement, when you execute a query, each time it is going to compile and execute, so little bit performance overhead will be there. If and also the statement connection dot create statement is always useful if you are executing a query without any parameters in the where condition. But if you are using like a parameterized queries where you are going to pass some values in the where conditions, then it is better to use the prepared statement, as it is going to improve the performance by eliminating the compiling the SQL statements each time. And finally, the callable statement is going to help you to execute the procedures or the functions against the database. And then what is result set and result set types and result set concurrency? Result set is a cursor, but it is a special type of the cursor. It is not like a database cursor. Whenever you execute a select query against the database, then it is going to return you the result set. Where result set is going to cursor, it is going to pointing to the first record of the result set. So by using the while condition rs.next, you can iterate through the while loop to get each row at a time. That means if you are using the while rs.next, and then you can each time when it iterates, it is going to represent the one row of the data in the table. So result set is basically is a cursor which holds the table data, and initially it is going to pointing to the first record of the database whatever it has retrieved, and by using the while loop you can iterate through the result set and you can process the data. Now result set has the it is basically the functionality of the result set can be varies based on the result set types and the result set concurrency. First, let us see what is meant by result set types. Result set types, it going to tell you how it will behave about the navigation or the iteration of the result set. So result set types basically it can impact in a three ways. One is you can set result set type as a type forward only, or type scroll insensitive, or type scroll sensitive. What is meant by types forward, type underscore forward underscore only? That means once you get the result set, you can navigate or you can traverse only in the forward direction till end of the record it encounters. So you cannot move backward or the you can't move forward. It is only the forward direction only you can iterate through the result set. And type scroll insensitive means you can you can navigate forward direction or the backwards direction, or even you can go with the absolute position. But if absolute position it is possible, and also the result set data whatever you have seen, it is not going to it is not going to have any impact on the if somebody already changed something in the database for the particular query, then it will not impact in the type scroll insensitive. Then type scroll sensitive means it is same as the type scroll insensitive, but here if somebody modifies the data in the results in the query, as long as the result set is open, then whatever the changes it is happened in the database, it will be applied on the result set. Those are the three different types of the result sets it is available. And result set concurrency. Concurrency is basically how multiple multiple threads are trying to access or modifying the data on the result set, how it will behave. Now, first one is, okay, one more point here in the case of result set types, by default, result set will have the type forward only. So by default, it will set to type forward only. Okay, and the if you come to the concurrency, there are two types of the concurrency can apply on the result set. First one is the concurrent read only, and second one is the concurrent underscore updatable. When you set concurrent underscore read underscore only means it cannot update it using the result set interface. That means once you got the result set, you can't update the result set data. And conquer underscore updatable means once you get the result set data, still you can go ahead and add some records, or you can delete some records in the result set. By default, the result set concurrency level is going to set to conquer underscore read underscore only. So by default, it will not allow to update anything on the result set object or the result set data. Now, next one is how to handle the database exception in while working with the JDBC. You know, exception is a nothing but which is going to stop the normal execution flow. And even in the case of JDBC also, while interacting with the database, there might be a chances that it is going to encounter a lot of exception during the interaction with the database. Hence, we need to have a proper exception handling mechanism so that we can display proper messages to the end user if there is any problem while interacting with the database. So, in order to handle the database exception, all the exceptions related to the JDBC, we use a special exception class, that is a SQL exception. So all the exception related to the JDBC will fall under the SQL exception. Now there are multiple ways you can handle the exception. The first one is try with catch block. And if you are using like a Java JDK 1.6 or the lower version of it, then you have to go with the try block and catch block, and finally block to close the connection or the statement or the prepared statement or result set. But if you are using the latest JDK 1.7 onwards, we have a concept of try with resources, where automatically closing the connections, automatically it will be taken care by the Java itself. Hence, you can go ahead and use try with resource statement, and finally you can use the catch as if you want to catch any exception, then try with resources and catch block you can put it. And whenever an exception happen while interacting with the database, then then the JDBC throws some exception with the few of the informations. The first one is the SQL exception it is going to throw, and it will tell you what is the SQL state and what is the SQL error code and cause for it. Whenever you see the logs, automatically you will get it. What is the SQL state? State is nothing but it is going to tell you what is the what is the description about it, and error code is related to the, for example, for each database there is a error code like a ANSYS standards. They will put a some error code which will have a significant identification about the issue, and cause it is going to describe you what is the cause to to give an exception, like on what, because of which reason it has SQL exception happened. So using these information, it will help the developer to troubleshoot and fix the problem related to the SQL exception. And also SQL will have a some subclass exceptions like a SQL transient exception, SQL non-transient exception, and SQL recoverable exception. First, let us look at what is meant by SQL non-transient exception. SQL non-transient exception and exception which is going to occur when in an instance where when you are trying to retrieve an exception without when you retrieve the same operation without any retrieving the same operation is failed until you fix the cause for that issue. What it means is, now you have an interacting with the database, then your JDBC connection has exception has thrown, but when you are trying to retry the exception, when you are trying to retry once again to get the uh, interact with the database, it has to fail until you have fix the root cause for that issue. That is called an SQL non-transient exception. SQL transient exception means when an interaction with the database is failed, but when you retry the exception without taking any actions, it automatically succeeded, then it will comes under the SQL transient exception. SQL recoverable exception means you have taken some recovery steps in order to succeed the interaction with the database, then it will come under the SQL recoverable exception. So these are the subclasses of the exception you can see when you are working with the exception handling related to the JDBC. Next one is what is transaction management in the JDBC. In real-time scenarios also, what is meant by transaction? First, see, the transaction is an atomic unit of the work. Either it needs to be fully committed or fully rollback. That means in real-time scenarios, you might have a scenario where multiple one the success of a one transaction is depending on the another transaction. Then all the dependent transaction, if committed or succeeded successfully, then you are going to consider that as a one transaction, otherwise it is not considered as a transaction. So if you have those type of things in your requirement, then what you need to do is you need to have a transaction management in place. So by default, JDBC automatically commit each operation, each DML operation you do against the database. Hence, in order to implement the transaction management in JDBC, first you need to do is you need to make sure that you need to set auto commit false, and once you have performed all the JDBC interactions, finally you have to commit commit the transaction, so that all the setup related interaction with the database will fully reflect it on the database, otherwise it will be rollback. So in order to maintain the transaction management JDBC, you have to first disable this connection.set auto commit to false. Once you perform all the transactions related or all the interaction related to the particular transaction, then you can issue the command connection.commit, then it will be committed. If there is any exception happen, then you have to issue the command in the finally or the catch block connection dot rollback, so that all the transactions, whatever the interactions on the particular transaction will be rollback. To maintain the data integrity or the consistency in the database, JDBC provides the transaction management. For example, if you are working with, for example, in order to commit the data, commit the your interactions with the database, you use the connection dot commit. In order to roll back your interactions with the database, you can use the connection dot rollback. And also, if you are using like a partial commits, or if you want to retrieve your interaction with the database partially to commit particular point of time, then Java provides a concept, JDBC provides a concept of save point. So using the save point at any point of time, you can go ahead and save that particular state of that database interaction. And then if you want to roll back, you can go ahead and connection dot roll back, and you can give the save point. Then automatically till that save point, it is going to roll back. So that is how you need to work with the transaction management. And the next one is how do you get metadata about the table using the JDBC. In order to get the metadata information about the database which you are going to interact, we have an object called as a result set metadata, which you are going to get from the result set object. So using the result set metadata object, you will get column table level information. Like in the case of Oracle, you use the description to get the table information, like what is the column name, what is the data type, and what is the constraints it has, and all those information you can get from using the result set metadata. Similarly, if you want to get the metadata information about the database, for example, you are connecting to a Oracle database, or you are connected to a DB2 database or MySQL. In order to get information about the database, then we have a object called as a database metadata, which is going to get, you can get this information from the connection object. That means connection dot get database metadata, then it will give you the information about the data, like what is the database version, and what is the which type of driver you are using. All the related to the database metadata you will get from this database metadata object. And then what are the SQL warnings and how to handle them in the JDBC? So there is a small difference between the SQL exception versus the SQL warning. If an exception, if while interacting with the database, if an exception comes, means the transaction will be terminated, and the proper information about the exception you can get using the get error code, or the get message, or the get cause. All this it is available. But whereas in the case of SQL warning, it will just give you an information about there is some warning to the developer, or the it is going to print it in the log, so that whenever you are debugging the issue, you can get some idea about that. So SQL warning is can be reported on the connection, or the statement, or the result set. The best example of the SQL warnings is like truncating a particular size. For example, you have defined a column length of a 10 or 20 in the database, but you are trying to pass from the Java application to the database more than that, then it will give like a data truncate exception. And also, whenever you are revoking particular access from the particular resource, or the particular user, then the revoke statement may not be succeeded properly, then it gives you some warning messages. So warning messages are not stop the executing the queries against the database, but it is going to give you meaningful information about the warning, so that if you want to troubleshoot more about that SQL warnings, you will get those things. Okay, so yet now the SQL warning can be reported on the connection object or statement object, including prepare statement, callable statement objects, and result set objects. The best example of the SQL warning is the data truncation exception. So that will come under that. Now the next question is on how to execute procedure and functions in JDBC. So as I explained earlier, so callable statement is the which is going to use to execute either procedures or the functions against the database. Using this callable statement connection.prepare call, it is going to take call procedure name, and you can pass how many arguments you are going to pass to this procedure. So arguments again will have the three different types. One is input arguments, output arguments, in-out arguments. Input arguments are nothing but it is going to pass as a parameters values. Output is you are trying to return value after executing the procedure name, and in-out it can be both. It will take the input parameters from the Java application, at the same time it is going to return values to the application. Once you have prepared, once you use this syntax callable statement cs and connection dot prepare call procedure name, here you need to pass the procedure, and if it is going to take the number of parameters, you need to pass the question marks for each parameter one, and then you need to set those values here. For example, in this case it is going to take the two parameters for this procedure. Now that is the reason what I am saying, what I am setting here is cs dot set string one parameter one, and second one is here cs dot register output parameter. Here remember that whenever you define any output parameter, then you need to catch that output parameter from the procedure like this. Cs dot register out parameter, it is going to hold the value whatever it is returning from this procedure. Okay, and finally you are going to execute this query against it. This is how you need to call the procedure or the functions from the using the JDBC. And the next important question related to the upload or downloading the image from the database. How we are going to upload or download the image from the database using the JDBC. The first one is you are going to, in order to upload the image into the database, first what you need to do is you need to create a prepared statement, and then you need to pass the whatever the parameters required for the file. All things you need to pass. In this case I am just giving a file name and content I am going to store in the database. So first what we are trying to do is we are setting the file name, and second one is we are converting the whatever the image you want to upload to the database, that we need to convert into the file input stream, and then that you need to set as a ps.set binary stream, and here you need to pass the whatever the input stream you are reading from the image, you need to pass it and then execute the data, execute this query against the database. Then automatically the image will be stored in the database. But in real scenarios or in real time world, most of the time database stream itself we don't usually store in the database. Instead of that, what we will do is we will use the some file system repository in the particular server, and that reference actually we are going to store in the database. Whenever you want to download or the uploading, first we will place the file in the particular file system, and then that reference will be updated in the this particular table, so that whenever you retrieve also, first we will get where the file is reside. From that you are going to read, and it is going to given to the client. Similarly, if you want to use to download the image from the database, similarly you are going to create a prepared statement. You need to give the you need to give like for example here you can give directly result set name, that is fine, and then you can going to execute the query against the database, and then you need to set as a block and then convert that one into the byte array, and this one you are going to pass to the client. This is nothing but the stream you are going to pass it. That is how you are going to work in order to store images in the database and retrieving the database. But as I told you, in real-time scenario, mostly we are going to use the file system where you are going to place the actual content of the file in a particular file system, and then the reference to the path of that image will be stored in the table. While retrieving the images also, first we will look for the way the path of the file is available and go to that file system, download from there, and we are going to pass to the client. That is how we are going to work with the images. And next one is what is what are the difference between the statement, prepare statement, and callable statement. So if you create a statement is going to create using the connection dot create statement. Once you create a connection dot create statement, it is always recommended to use if you are executing any queries without any parameterized. That means your query does not have any parameters in the where conditions, or does not take any parameters. So, but the problem with the connection dot create statement is every time when you execute the query, first it will compile and it will execute against the database. So it will have the little bit performance overhead. Prepare statement are the best suitable in order to, and one more thing, whenever you are using statement connection dot create statement and you are using query constructing using the by taking user inputs, by appending the user inputs, then it is possible that there will be SQL injection might happens. Okay, that is the one disadvantage of it. Prepared statement are better suitable where you are going to your SQL queries will have the parameterized queries where you are going to take the user inputs and pass those as a where conditions in the SQL queries. Then it is better to use the prepared statement, because prepared statement only one time it will compile, and only next time or not it will directly execute the queries against the database. Hence, it has the better performance than when compared to the statement. That means using the connection dot create statement. And then callable statement are basically used to execute either procedures or the functions. In order to execute, we are going to use the callable statement. So does it possible to connect more than one database for the single application? Whenever you are working with the enterprise applications or the distributed applications where it may require your application need to talk to the multiple databases. Yes, by using the JDBC you can go ahead and connect it to the more than one application at a time, but you need to make sure that you have to have a proper driver. In this, when your application want to talk to multiple databases, it is preferred to have the type 3 driver. That is the only best suitable way to interact with the multiple databases for a single application. And what happens if developer close if you are trying to close an connection or the statement or the result set which is already closed, then it is going to throw an SQL exception. So you should not already close the connection or statement or the result set. Does it mandatory load the driver class before execute the SQL queries in the database? Until JDBC 4.0 will have by default, it is going to load the class driver whichever it is available on the class path related to the application. But if you are using the lower version of the JDBC version, then you have to load the driver class mandatory. But in the case of JDBC API 4.0, automatically the API will be JDBC API will taken care of loading the class driver class automatically. Then, does it mandatory close the resources? If so, how do you close resources connection in the object? The thing is, it is mandatory to close resources. Resources are nothing but the class or the interfaces which are going to implement auto closable or the closable interfaces which are called as the resources. Those things it is mandated to expect a developer has to close once they used those resources in the application. So in order to close the resources, there are two options. One is try catch finally block. Final block, you have to close this connection or the statement or the result set objects. Or if you want to use try with resources, then automatically Java will be taking care of closing those auto closable resources once it is going outside of the scope for that particular program. Then what is SQL injection? How to fix SQL injections? SQL injection is basically where the attacker can inject some malicious code in the our SQL statement, which will so that he can steal some valuable information, or he can he can allow our application will allow the some security mechanisms or security our application will expose as a security vulnerabilities for the attackers, where they can steal our information or they can execute some database statements, either it might be a select or update or delete or all the all the SQL information related to that, they can go ahead and perform it. Hence, in order to that is called as an SQL injection. For example, if you see here, select star from EMP, where employee ID equal to employee ID and employee name equal to employee name. Here, instead of employee ID, they can put something like a empty 0 or 1 equal to 1. Something they can put it, so that what happens is the SQL injection will happen here, and it is going to retrieve all the employees which are available in the employee table. Hence, this is called an SQL injection. In order to avoid this SQL injections in the while working with the JDBC, always make sure that you are going to use the prepare statement, and the parameters whatever the inputs it is taking from the user, this needs to be passed to the query. Here prepare statement, sorry, here I forgot, prepare statement set integer, set int employee ID, we have to pass it, and also we need to set a string of 2 comma employee name. Then you can execute this prepared statement, then automatically and if the attacker will pass any malicious code in the inputs, then our prepared statement will be taking care of those things, and it will not execute those SQL malicious SQL injections whatever user has inputted in the uh, through the user input. So this is how you need to avoid SQL injection. But most of the application we can see that there is a possibility of the SQL injections if they are constructing the SQL queries by concatenating, by directly taking the concatenating user inputs without doing any validation against it. And next one is what is memory leak and how to avoid memory leak in working with the JDBC. Memory leak will happen, for example, whenever you are opening a connection or the prepared statement or the result set. If you don't close them immediately after usage, then it is possible that whatever the objects it is prepared object it is you used in the application still not collected by the garbage collector. As the result, the application Java heap memory usage will be more, and which might lead to memory leaks, and finally it might sometimes it will go out of memory exception. Hence, our intention is to make sure that our application should not have a connection leaks. That can be hedged by using proper closing after using these resources. And if you are using a Java 1.7 onwards, then mostly you can use the try with resources. Then it is going to taking care of closing the resources automatically by Java itself or the Java. Okay, so the final question is what is CLOB and how to handle CLOB data type in JDBC. CLOB is, you can say, character large objects, and it is very rare scenario where you are going to store complete content, whatever like a huge content, whatever it is coming from the fields or the files to a particular column of the database. But if you want to do such way, then we have an option to do that using the CLOB data type. So connection dot create CLOB, it is going to create a CLOB object, and using this CLOB you can set whatever the file content you want to store it as part of the CLOB. You need to set that as a string, and then that you need to be insert it to the database using the prepared statement. For example, PSC statement, file name, and the CLOB whatever it has, and then against. Once you have do that, you have to make sure that you have to call the myclob.free, so that it is going to release the memory whatever it is allocated for the CLOB object in the JVM. If you don't free it, then it is still possible that JVM might goes out of memory exception, because CLOB can hold a huge amount of like a 2 GB file also. It is going to allocate, or it can hold the data of that. Hence, make sure that whenever you use the CLOB, you have to use the my free method to clear that whatever the memory allocated for the particular CLOB. Similarly, you want to get this CLOB from the database. It is similarly, we have a method called rs dot sorry, here I have didn't you include it. Once you have execute against this one, we have a concept of rs dot get CLOB, and you can pass the file name, then automatically it is going to convert into a string, and that using that string you can read the data from whatever it is there in the cloud. So these are the most frequently questions so far we have seen in most frequently asked Java interview question and answer related to JDBC. Hope you are clear with all these questions, and if you have, it is better to have a little bit practical session so that you will have a real understanding about all these concepts. I am going to explain one program at a high level so that it is really makes sense for you to correlate whatever the concepts whatever the questions we have seen so far. So in this case, what I am doing here is that first I am going to get the list of employee objects, for example here. So the first step is we need to, so in order to work with the JDBC, first step is loading the driver. So loading the driver is nothing but, if you see the create connection, I use the try with resources. If you can give multiple resources here, automatically once JVM control will go out of this block, automatically the JVM will taking care of cleaning this connection and the prepare statement, whatever the resources you are used within this block. Okay, that will be taking care of it. Hence, first step is you need to load the driver. So I am using like a Apache Derby database to just for the demo purpose. So I loaded the driver by using the class.forName. You can load the driver. Once you load the driver, the second step is you need to get the connection. In order to get the connection, we need to have a driver manager.get connection, and you need to pass the DB URL and schema username and schema password. In this case, DB URL Apache Derby database, the URL formation will be something like this: JDBC Derby forward slash is localhost 1527 slash simple is a schema name and create equal to true. For this, test user is a username and test user is the password. So I got the connection. Once you got the connection, the next step is you need to create a statement. In order to create a statement, what I have done is prepare statement pst is equal to pst dot prepare statement connection dot prepare statement. I am going to pass the query for that. Now SQL statement, using the statement we are going to execute the queries. So now what we are trying to do here is we prepared the statement and we passed whatever the values it is required is employee ID and employee name. Then we are setting to this prepared statement, and then we are executing the prepare statement against the database. Now it is going to execute the against the database and it will return as the result set. So result set is nothing but it is going to represent the data for this particular query, and by using the while loop you can iterate through the result set and you can process the data, and finally you need to close the connection. As we are using the try with resources, hence it is not required to close the connection manually. Otherwise what you need to do is, if you are not using the try with resources, you need to put the finally block. Here you need to clean up or the close the resources, close resources related to connection, comma, statement, comma, result set. These things you have to be make sure that finally block always you need to close the resources to avoid the memory leaks in the working with the JDBC. So this is how you are going to get the results from the database. But if you want to execute any update statement, then as I told you, all the steps it will be as it is except the getting the result set, because while working with the update statement or the delete statement, you don't have the result set, it won't give the back. Hence you can go ahead and directly execute the query against the database, and finally you need to close the connection. So this is the sample pseudo code which will tell you how we are going to interact with the database. And while preparing for the interview, make sure that you have a some sample programs you will try with the each concepts, so that you will get a real-time understanding how exactly we use all these concepts in the JDBC. Hope you are clear with all the questions and answers related to the JDBC. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please comment on my YouTube video. All the best for your interviews. Have a nice day.